This podcast was recorded in Calgary, Alberta, on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina, the Iya Nakota Nations, the Otipimswak Métis government, the Métis Nation within Alberta District 6, and all the people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta. I'm Michael Tolboom, Associated Engineering's creative lead, sitting in for our usual host on the podcast, Graham Nix.
Coming to you on the internet audio, all the STEM homies know ways where you gotta go vibing your ride to the Graham and Michael groove. Whoa, it's a whole new funky flow interview. Treat your ears, get the gist of careers from a list of our engineers and scientists, maybe twisted up with technologists. It's a podcast, baby, and not to be missed. Got more fly than a ripe banana. Like Sam, I got the stamina streaming across Canada. I can treat sugar band, I got that swiggity swag, yeah, and the 411 from my horse to Niagara. Don't you know we're gonna innovate? Got a topic here to elevate. Gonna entertain and educate.
Good data management on a governmental scale is an issue that has immense power to affect our everyday lives, but it's also an issue that for many of us is in the background. Data management has become increasingly crucial due to the exponential growth of digital information. We are all generating vast amounts of data now. It's a challenge for any organization to ensure that the information remains accurate, accessible, secure, and efficiently utilized, as well as being ethically collected. The sheer volume of data can be overwhelming, leading to issues with storage, processing, and analysis. Sources and formats change and evolve constantly, alongside data security and privacy concerns that are under constant pressure from cyber threats and regulatory compliance requirements. However, municipalities that prioritize effective data management stand to gain significant competitive advantages, including improved decision-making on behalf of their citizens and enhanced operational efficiency. Today, I'm in conversation with Judy Yu, Associated's Data Management and ITS Discipline Lead, to get some insights into how the technologies and challenges have evolved and how our towns and cities can take advantage of experts in the field. So, welcome, Judy, to AE Live. I'm going to start out with just a little bit of history. You graduated in 1999 with a degree in civil engineering. A lot of the engineers that I've talked to say that they went through university wanting to build something specific, or maybe there was a pivotal moment in their childhood that made engineering look really attractive. So was that the case for you as well?
So, number one, when you said 99, I cringed a little bit. Not that I'm an egomaniac, but it was a long time ago. So I look back on my younger self and I think, was there this, complex decision-making selection process? I would say no. My parents were tradesmen. My dad was a cabinet maker and my mom was a wood carver by trade, master actually. And so working with my hands, not a problem. Understanding how things are built, not such a problem. But, there are only certain things you're very, very good at. And I think I was in that bucket of, there's only certain things I'm good at. Math, science, speaking to people, not really. Writing things, not really. So I bought into the, now I realize it's a lie, that engineers don't have to speak or write. So I feel a little bit ripped off. That was not supposed to happen. And now that's all I do, speak and write. So it's funny. So, I think I went with the gut feel. Engineering is a great choice and I have no regret. So I'm really excited about our future.
Now, I know you spent a few years with the City of Calgary prior to coming to Associated Engineering, and then you were with Calgary Transit. Can you tell me a little bit about how those experiences helped guide you into your current role? What was it about Associated that made you decide to join us?
Well, I spent 12 years with the City of Calgary, and Calgary Transit was my last stop. First 4 years with planning and development. That was amazing. I think everyone should know how a city is built from the ground up. And that's housing, commercial, office, mixed use, how that happens. And for me, transportation and its very close connection to land use development and how a society is built. Is it an economic driver? Is it a social driver? Is it about affordable housing? Is it about vulnerable people? Every decision you make layers on top of each other. And at a municipal level, that's where it comes together. But everyone should understand how difficult that is to do well. It's easy to criticize, very hard to do well. And I actually was a development engineer for all of South Calgary. All of South Calgary, not a portion of it. So 750,000 people. And so that was really exciting. Mobility was my next stop, roads. So that was operations, how to move traffic through the network, and then transit. It's about, public access to transportation. So the whole goal of each of those pieces was significantly different. And the overarching need was the public good. What is the general good we're trying to achieve for everyone, given this, what we can afford, what would we like to build as a society? It led me to think I would like to move back into engineering, because I think at a certain point you have to make that decision of, in a city, would you pursue a administrative career, which is just fine, and start moving in that direction, or do you still want to be in the working hands-on side? And to me, I felt like I had more work to do there. I was also very heavily involved with ITS, which is Intelligent Transportation Systems, and I needed to be with my people. I didn't want to be away from the groundwork that's, coming out of startups. What the trends of the industry are. It's very important to keep on top of it. So I chose to come back out, and then AE popped on my radar due to a few senior people, and we had those discussions, and then I thought, yeah, let's give it a go.
Because AE had been working with the city?
I didn't know AE. No, we actually, funniest thing, I actually live really close to work, and I said, where's your office? They're like, you've never been to our office? No. And it was actually 8 minutes from my house. So quality of life went way up. 1 hour commute way down. And ultimately, when you love what you do, it's not trade-offs in the time for money bucket anymore. You're really trying to do something meaningful with your time.
Yeah.
And I think that's how I measure it now.
And you understand that reduction in commute time better than most?
Oh, it was ridiculous. No, it's been really good, both in professional practice and growth, which I think consultancies, I didn't fully appreciate the diversity of work and the ability to make a difference across many jurisdictions. You work for one, wonderful. You love your city, you love your people, but sometimes that can get bogged down. When you work for a consultancy, you are able to help many, many jurisdictions achieve their goals. And that is very satisfying. I love it. Yeah.
Is that where your focus on intelligent transportation systems came from? Was seeing the width and breadth of the stuff that Calgary was doing, and you saw people doing that, and it just struck you as something you wanted to be involved in?
I was the first ITS engineer at the city of Calgary. Okay. I got another story for you. Okay, this is right in the old bucket. Okay, so I got a call one day from the city of Calgary out of nowhere. And they said, hey, could we interview you? I said, for what? And they go, well, we got a newsletter on the female engineers that worked in transportation. And you were either the first or the second in planning. Okay. And so apparently that was a big deal. I didn't know about that. But the ITS thing I interviewed for was the very first position in the city, and I had to write an exam. It was a written exam after the interview on the spot. And they closed the door and they said, you can write this question. And the question was, what are the emerging risks to the city of Calgary if we were to embark on an ITS journey? And that led me on to a path of it's almost like living up to it. It's understand where the city was at, and you wanted to be a part of that innovation picture. They were super innovative at the time. They were leading edge innovative. So I caught them on the right curve.
Right.
And I wanted to live up to that promise. So yeah, that got me going. Yeah.
Being in the right place at the right time.
Oh, you betcha. Yeah, you betcha.
Now, I know ITS projects can take decades. Maybe as a client works their way through becoming familiar with all the processes and doubts the new technologies, and then becomes familiar with the newer processes that came about from those technologies. Do you see this kind of long cycle necessitating a different approach to the client relationships that you have, or that a firm like Associated should have versus that of other engineering disciplines where, maybe the project is cut and dry and done in a few months or a couple of years?
Well, I think it depends on our business objectives. So many of our competitors provide managed services in ITS that include operation, maintenance, and ownership of entire facilities, like a traffic management center, an operations center, which means inside of a building, all the systems, all of the things that react to what's going on out there are manned by a company. They've been doing that for many, many decades, but that's an objective they had, probably in their, growth and revenue. And that's meaningful to them. Our equivalent to that might be ATEP, right? So I wouldn't say that we couldn't do that, but it's not been in our past to do that in the traffic space. Right now, there are plenty of projects that are built and handed over, just like any infrastructure. And I would say ITS is a strategy to get value out of your infrastructure that you wouldn't otherwise realize. So the tech is a layer, just like you have a technology layer on a device that you already own. And you're like, well, what else can it do? Well, I can't make it do it without this layer. And this layer is relatively cheap compared to the infrastructure that you own. So if you own a road worth $50 million, $20 million, the ITS on top of that to squeeze out all the capacity, all the intelligence, is maybe $2 million. So to get the maximum benefit from your asset, this is a strategy. It doesn't exist by itself. Project, right? It doesn't just exist for the purpose of existing. It's to optimize. So that's a really big deal. Optimize your infrastructure. And that only happens at a certain part in congestion in the life of a city. So city goes through a life of, it's a baby, there's so many people, you don't have congestion problems, you have 10 cars, it's no big deal. As you grow and the development picture to your downtown, your beltline, to your suburbs changes, your infrastructure becomes stressed. And that stress isn't a bad thing. It's just that you need to now decide, are you going to blow away all those houses and put in a bigger road? Probably not. How do I optimize my grid, my road network, for a very cost-effective price point that's agile? So let's say that your suburbs, some of them are in baby stage. There are lots of babies coming out. Then there's other ones that are aged. Well, those traffic patterns are going to change. And with technology, you actually can adapt the infrastructure to the demographics for very little cost. There's no need to close that road. You can just agile a solution based on the changing demographics. So it's about a 10-year cycle for every community to go through different stages, teenagers, retirement, and it renews and becomes baby again. What happens is then your ITS can endure, but it also life cycles. So to your point, you say, well, why would clients need to adapt a new process? It's not that they have to. It's that because it takes 10 years-ish, overlapping years for a road to see the differences in demographic use, they then need to find technology, probably by then it's obsolete, to suit their needs. It's not that they have to do it. They could just decommission it. But they might want to do it to then create more value from the same streets.
Right.
Yeah, so that's kind of why ITS exists. It's cool, but it's actually there for a reason.
So how long would it take for implementation of that ITS layer?
It depends on the scale. Of total program value at the time that I was implementing, it was probably 100 million of all of the systems, all of the devices, the traffic management center, everything. If we talk about everything, infrastructure and manpower to get it done, like the installation. So it's not a little bit, but it was over a course of 8 years. So it can be significant, and to this day, they run the same architecture. So I architected it so that it would endure, but they've upgraded some of the devices, and to this day, they still use those.
Right.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. Yeah.
You've trained them to think about this way of approaching the problem.
Well, they have the architecture that worked before, and it was meant to endure so that it would never cost them to pull down everything. They could always it's just easily upgrade the end parts without having to pull down all the infrastructure parts.
Right.
Yeah, so the second traffic management center has already been out there for a while, and they are leveraging the exact same thoughts, the same, this is the design of the system.
Right.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
Good investment. So you've talked about the life cycle of the cities that, they start as babies, and on kind of a broader scale, I've seen some estimates suggesting that more than 2/3 of humanity will live in cities by 2050, which is not that far away. So this high urban concentration leads to new challenges and opportunities, and the people in those cities have growing expectations for the management of their mobility, their security, their waste management, communications, sustainability, energy production and consumption.
For sure.
So to address these concerns and improve the living environment, we've got this concept now of a smart city that's emerged. So I'll ask you a pretty broad question here for our listeners, but maybe it's the first question you get asked by your clients as well. How can a community leverage its data to be the smart city? How can the good data management help transform a community?
And I love how you frame that. I was going to say I'm going to have to reframe it in my mind, my judgy mind. But no, you totally hit that, because most people will be like, how are you going to get fiber to every doorstep? That's not a smart city, okay? That's a connected city, but it's not a smart city. And a smart city has many, many decisions to make, both at the administrative level, the council level, and the human people who live there level. And everybody's decision-making matrices are different. So to your point, how does data facilitate this? And we are collecting a lot of it. And the part that we concentrate on, and we can get sidetracked by a lot of things, so I'll try not to go there. They're all important, but we can't address them all. What we do in Associated is around infrastructure asset information and data. That has become super important in light of our gaps for infrastructure funding, the need for service levels, the urbanization. So when you stick a whole bunch of people into a city and they use the same services, for sure there's going to be strain, for sure. And to get a system that used to be top A grade level to twice the population is definitely going to be challenging. And we're finding that the data that is out there today probably isn't at the quality, the currency, the frequency that it needs to be yet, especially in Canada, to facilitate that future desires. We're still quite far away from that. So it's not at the point where we can even say, let's package these properly. We actually have to figure out our desire for better decision making and what that means, and then govern that.
What do you think led to that gap?
Lack of information.
Lack of data. That we wanted to get and the data that we did get. Is it that the tools weren't there, or people just weren't approaching the problem, or? It's
somewhat like that. I think people might know we have a practice called asset management in AE, and I am a part of that group. It was here at the ground level. And what we see from the early days of what is asset management? And then we're trying to explain this concept of it's a systematic approach to the way you look at and fund assets, not the shiny pretty thing. Sometimes it is, and that's we can deal with that. But how are you actually seeing the portfolio, and what would you fund if you never had enough money? Fast forward 12 years later, people are starting to sweat that budget a lot more and going I don't have enough. That's right, you don't have enough. And what happens in the life cycle of infrastructure is before hitting the halfway mark of really long-lived assets, you're not going to see a massive change in dollar value. Every year, what do? Oh, I go and do some patching. Oh, I do some filling. I wash it. It's a low budget. And then it hits past half-life. And now you're seeing that. But if you don't forecast that and you don't comprehensively understand that, imagine that on one building or one stretch of road, and now multiply it by 100, 1,000, several thousand. And now several thousand things are coming into a life cycle past half-life that they need stuff, and you don't have enough money. So I think we caught the curve early, trying to be proactive as we do, because that's what we're trying to do, is raise hey, there might be a need here, and everybody was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I've seen that kind of ladder of maturity in asset management.
It's improving. It's improving. Like we sometimes you have to be patient. You have to let the cards fall where they may first. People have to come to their own conclusions about need. Even though we see it and they don't, then they don't have a problem. They don't think they have a problem. So for us to say that they do would be disrespectful.
Yeah.
But now many clients that own many kinds of infrastructure are flagging, like, I don't know what my risk is, and I don't know how to fund it, and I don't know how much I'm leaving on the table. So if you spend all your money and you don't know how much risk you're mitigating with it, that would keep me up as well. Because if one of those unaddressed risks appear in that year, you're going to get asked why. And answering the why, it's a transparency thing. It's the ability for council to respond to, why did that roof collapse? What was the reason that we let it get to that point? Was there a trade-off that was worth that risk? And how did we manage this?
Yeah, because nobody ever asks what was the trade-off.
Yeah, right? Because I honestly think that there had never been a systematic look at that data and tracking that decision-making to be clear that this amount of money offset this amount of risk, and that was good a return. That was a very good return for your public money. I made that choice because that just didn't exist before. And so I think moving forward, my practice, I'd like to change the way people think about that so that they can move their organizations in the right direction. Let's just take some action, take little steps in the right direction, bring people with us, and now you're steering back into a world that you know things. You're going to invest in the right thing. You're going to feel good just by moving in the right direction. It won't be overnight. But I think that it's a service to help clients understand that they can switch direction, and that's not going to unravel all of their organization, and people will get laid off and they're going to lose their job. That's not the intent. It really is about, if we're talking about smart decision making and in a smart city, we're talking about cities that will endure, provide services, net migration is up, economic indicators are up, because the fluid exchange of information is governed. So I think that's, as engineers, we, in the digital future, our engineering expertise has to communicate this in the digital worlds.
So that leads really nicely into the other question I was going to ask. If I'm a community coming to you for this kind of advice, what do you typically see as the first step? Like, is it just education that the problem exists at all, or?
Yeah, I think it's framing the question. So one of the things that we do in SAS that I think is a little bit more rare is that we often reframe the problem statement. What I find myself doing quite often is sitting the client down and having a conversation about, are you sure that was the problem you wanted to address? And we just iterate it, until they go, oh, it was more like this. And without forcing them, we actually get to not a symptom, not a Band-Aid, but the problem. Because then what you want to do is solve the root cause. Because if you solve a symptom and you just go with the client's judgment, it's very, in our world, quite often, it's mistaken for root cause. Yeah, it's a symptom. So we're like, here's a symptom, here's a symptom, here's a symptom, and they're all pointing toward this. This is the problem you need to be solving. And they appreciate that. So it's not as scary. It's scary in that, oh my God, are they gonna not appreciate being challenged? Quite often, I think that's not a problem. If you're coming in a thoughtful way, in an informed way, with the right information, we present it in a caring, like, we're just here to support you through it. It usually goes really well.
Yeah, it must be very rewarding to get to that point.
Yeah, and for me, I think broadly, like Canada, like what do engineers want to do for Canada? There are problems that are really big, but then they all translate down to the cities. There are really big problems at the federal level, but they don't own anything really. They just want things done. So we kind of translate that down to our clients who own things and go, like in your context, that's how this problem falls out. Because we're programmed to look for, why is this happening? And it's not as clear as normally like what's right in front of you. That's what I think. But it is very rewarding.
Do you see any kind of friction, I guess, between the goals of like a small community or the province or the feds as to how they approach this, that they're all looking for different things?
I see a lot of barriers in terms of not wanting to get into someone's authority space. And they're very respectful of each other. But as you know, in Canada, we are a certain way. And I think participation is optional at the provincial level, which is why you see some national level things not being achieved in a timely way. And that's a path we've chosen because it's more democratic, it's more consensus building. That leaves room for people like us because the government, the feds don't come in and say, you must do this. Here's our opportunity to help out. If you have clients that trust us, that we understand their needs, we can actually move them in a direction that gets access to federal funding, because what the feds have is leverage. They have leverage through money. And they go, you're not going to get any of this unless you achieve my 3 goals. And you can do both. I think we're the right people to think through, okay, if the people who are at the table don't really see the alignment, do I see an alignment? Because my lens is a little different. And can I achieve the goals of both? Get you the money. You don't have to be a whole hog on board, but you get the money, you get your objectives, and they get some too. And I've seen that be successful in our grant funding schemes, in kind of identifying the right grants to approach our clients on and say, hey, did you see this? Because you mentioned something about this to me before. And this has both, it covers both. And I think we can do that a little bit more if we're thoughtful about it, careful about it. Yeah.
Do you feel like the federal government has laid out their goals clearly? Are they the right goals?
They are big. I think the federal government has a challenge of, international pressure, their own political pressure, and the pressure of actually just doing things for the people of Canada. So for them, they're just trying to get through that piece and then not interfere in provincial authority. So they do keep their statements very, very broad most times. And then they sound good, but whether or not they achieve it, I think doesn't really get revealed transparently. If they were clear about their KPI, I want to make a resilient supply chain. What are the measurable things that we can get projects on the ground for and measure against the KPI? I've not seen that, because if we knew that, then we could definitely translate to infrastructure and definitely affect that KPI. I've not seen that myself, so it's a bit loose. It's a bit loose, but I think depending on the province, you can get them on board in different ways.
Just vague enough to be
diplomatic.
Yeah,
which is important. You don't want to offend people, right?
Have you seen the role of a data management professional change? I.e., are people asking different things of you now?
They become more mature?
Yes. Okay, so I'd like to say that I wish I was being asked really hard questions, because that would mean our clients are getting way, way smarter in this space. Oh. And that just makes me more excited, because I'm like, that's awesome. It's cool that you think that way and that you didn't come up with an answer, because, hey, that's what I'm for. I don't get that much in terms of specific questions. Our clients in the infrastructure space really are struggling with heavily with the asset management piece. More recently, in the last year, I observed a pretty big shift in that IT enterprise level governance start to recognize that they got to get these asset management people in the line. There's a lot of systems. They own a lot of stuff. They pay a lot of money. It's not one. It's 10. And then you're integrating with finance. You're integrating with human resources to some extent. Integrating with maintenance management. It's kind of a large footprint. So it's starting to make the enterprise level visibility wait a minute, what's going on here? And that might trigger more collaborative work. between us facilitating our clients who do a lot of infrastructure and an enterprise IT group, because it's pretty far apart. Like the language is different. Their understanding of actual future cost is different. Their understanding of data information needs is different. So one of the things that we have to do is establish roles and responsibilities more clearly as it aligns to asset management goals, as it aligns to data management goals. So say the IT guy is like, he's just making sure the data is coming in, and he's not looking at it for you. So then the data owner, perhaps like in a year's time, 2 years' time, goes and looks and goes, what is this? And then tries to get IT to fix it. And they're like, I don't know. You asked me for that data. I streamed it in for you. I stored it for you. It's archived. That's my role. And I see it over and over again is a misunderstanding of roles and responsibilities, which leads to a massive gap in how you can leverage your data. So I'm trying to change it into like data as an asset instead of data as data, all right? Because actually in the data management space, there have been talks of insuring data. So massive, like companies like Amazon, if they get a breach, and this has already happened, one large company had a breach and it was stolen. Actually like a physical steal. Now it's you may find it again, but the chances of finding it again are very slim. It will definitely affect what's going on out there, your reputation, all kinds of stuff. So you're going to hit for that steal. They've tried to ensure that because once it's stolen and say they don't have a backup record of it, this is not just a breach of like personal information. They literally have lost. Let's say they don't have a good archiving. They wanted the insurance to pay them because that was valuable to them. That was their line to their customers, and they lost it.
Yeah.
And the answer from the insurance company was, you didn't value it for me, so I don't know. You can't just make up an arbitrary value. So in the industry, they're trying to find a way to value different types of data at an appropriate worth so that it can be insured.
So do we deal with that valuation, that designation or assignation maybe of ownership as part of our work?
I would love to, but no, we don't, because we're still in the throes of what do I own? Do I trust my data? No, I don't. It's pretty bad. So yeah, I hope that as we get through this stage of like the early stages of learning, that eventually, I see it maybe in the next 3 years at the rate that we're changing now, that maybe we'll start hitting those. In Vancouver, they actually just went through something like this, and so it's a committee-run data management, data governance group that includes asset owners from infrastructure, but the actual owner of the data is the CEO of the city of Vancouver. So it's no longer, the data no longer is owned by the people who own the assets. So say you're a roads manager, transportation general manager, you don't own that data. You're a steward of the CEO's data.
Interesting.
It is interesting. Yeah, that's right. It was a very recent thing. There's many, many steps before they got to that conclusion. And the number of hours, man hours that it took to get there was, I'm sure I couldn't even count them. So with the clients that we have, we're still at like road mapping improvements. So if you haven't heard of this term, it's like over several years, it could be 5, it could be 10. What are the meaningful improvements you can make to your overall practices, like stuff you do every day? That's why it's called a practice. I do it every day. That would make a significant difference to your overall picture. So those are the things we do. And in the roadmap, sometimes they bring us back. Sometimes that's the work that we see again, sole sourced, because they go, you know me and you didn't judge me. You just told me what I needed to do. I like you. You can come back. When we give broad statements, unfortunately, what it seems like is we don't understand the challenges that they face internally with getting people on board for an idea, change management, the people's jobs that we're affecting. It sounds like we're very cold and callous, like you just flip the switch and do that. So what we try to do is understand the context, the challenges, and then create a roadmap. That roadmap is very customized. And people like that, generally.
We've reached the end of the first part of my conversation with Judy Yu, Associated Data Management and ITS Discipline Lead. But there's a lot more to come. Join me in the next episode of AE Live, where we'll build on our data management discussion with some insights and anecdotes from the world of intelligent transportation systems, and look at the role that Canada can play in this fast-evolving field.
Coming to you on the internet audio, all the STEM homies know is where you gotta go vibing your ride to the Graham and Michael groove. Whoa, it's a whole new funky flow interview. Treat your ears, get the gist of careers from the list of our engineers and scientists, maybe twisted up with technologists. The podcast, baby, and not to be missed. Got more fly than a ripe banana. Like Sam, I got the stamina streaming across Canada. I can treat sugar band, I got that swiggity swag, yeah, and the 411 from my horse to Niagara. Don't you know we're gonna innovate? Got a topic here to elevate. Gonna entertain and educate.